Hello everyone! My name is Brando Cookie Dough, and today I'll be reviewing a little game that's called Puzzle Guzzle. So for anyone who doesn't know what this game is, which is the majority of the people watching this video, it's basically a fun puzzle game that in my opinion, is very addicting to me and a few others. Sure, from what you're seeing right now, it's basically a Tetris bootleg with no little substance. But I can assure you that it's very interesting and more than what you think it is. So without further ado, let's talk about it. To start off, let's go over the game's origins. So this game was released in February 26, 2008 for North Americans. Meanwhile in Japan, this game was released early in July 29, 2007. And lastly, it was released in December 2, 2008 for Europeans. Now you may wonder, what platform did this game release on? This game was released on the PlayStation Portable, or PSP for short. The game was published by IRM and H-Tech, as well as DHM Interactive, but I think they mostly helped on publishing the European version of the game. Now checking on IRM and H-Tech, their other releases from other games were mostly Japanese games. I'm not sure what other games they released that I know of. But just to name a few, they released Kung Fu Master, Undercover Cops, The Adventures of Cookie and Cream, Bloody Vampire, and etc. Now, is there any background of this game being advertised? To put it simply, there's sadly not enough background for this game since it was just to make a quick buck off of a puzzle game. But not like it sold too much anyway. Reason being, it's an indie title for the PSP. Not for the reason that the game is bad, far from it. But for the reason that the game was sadly never advertised at all. Especially in Japan. Which is crazy to think about since we have this game that doesn't have an advertisement. But it's alright. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the game. So upon booting up the game, you enter the title screen, where the only options are New Game, Continue, and Launch Website. Which, New Game is pretty much self-explanatory. As well as for Continue, also being self-explanatory. But Launch Website is an interesting one. From what I know so far, it probably tries to boot you to the PlayStation Store. Now I'm not sure if this game ever had any DLC. Which would be crazy to think about. But if it did, it's probably lost media. Who knows, it probably had something that we don't know about. And yes, I've tried going into it. But every time I did, it crashes my emulator whenever I try to use it, so I try not to bother with it. Hopefully we'll see what this launch website thingy is. So anyway, starting a new game makes you choose your little shape's name, gender, personality, and sign. Now for the name and gender is understandable, I would get why I need to change it. But for personality and sign? It's just there. It doesn't really matter which one is used. It's again, just there. Well actually there is one use for them, but we'll get to that later. From there, we can access the main menu which has single play, which is the main modes that this game has to offer. Two different types of multiplayer. There's also Quiz Puzzle Edit, which allows you to make your own quiz puzzles. Which is a neat addition that they didn't need to add, so that's a bonus. There's a fortune teller which tells you how your career, money, love, and lucky color are going to be. Then there's options, data exchange, tutorial, and data. Tutorial and data exchange are pretty much self-explanatory, so I won't go into further details with those two things. I'll only go over options and data. In data, every time you have to save your progress, you need to go over to save, load. Which is annoying to do all the time, but it's not really a big deal. From data we can see all the parts we got from the characters and the history of every time your shape changed over the course of the game. It reminds me of an evolution, which is a neat thing to think about. Then there's records where you can see you and your opponent's stats. Lastly, there are statistics that you can see from your opponents, which tells you their popularity, gender, personality, and signs. And that's literally what the purpose of having a personality and a sign is for this game. Pretty underwhelming, but it's not something to worry about. Now going back to options, you can change the background to default, orange, Tokyo, samurai, rainforest, and special. Which I'm not sure what special does, because it'll crash my game. So I won't bother with it. Then you can change the music, sound, and voice volume and change the match points too. Now you may wonder, there's voices. Yes, actually, there is voices in this game, and it's the little sounds that the shapes make when you're challenging an opponent. Which I should probably review the game now. So for this review, I'll only be covering the single-player experience, since I don't have a buddy that can play with me. And also since I'm running this on an emulator. It's literally impossible to run into a person who has this game. Going into single play, there's 3 puzzles to explore, which are Drop Puzzle, Stuff It Puzzle, and Quiz Puzzle. First, let's cover Drop Puzzle. But before we do that, I have to address that some puzzles have extra modes to explore. And for Drop Puzzle, those extra modes are Challenge Mode and Single Mode. These modes are also in Stuff It Puzzle too. But instead of Single Mode in Stuff It Puzzle, it's actually time trials. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So in Challenge Mode for Drop Puzzle, you attack a CPU seeing who can outlast the other opponent. If your box gets filled with unmatched squares, you lose. But if your opponent's box gets filled before yours does, you win. What do you win, you may ask? You take something from your opponent, from looks to skills that they own. Or maybe nothing. The best part from this is that you can pick what to take from that opponent. Like a hat or nose. Just keep in mind that if you take a perk, you'll have it until you replace that said perk with another. You can't revert back unless you fight that opponent that has that said perk you want. I forgot to mention this, but before you choose an opponent, there's a chart that shows you how strong or weak that opponent is. It's pretty handy if you ask me. It ranges from a certain level, so just keep that in mind before you blindly attack a shape that has more skill than you. So in single mode for Drop Puzzle, you're basically playing by yourself and you're trying not to let your box get filled with unmatched squares. Your only goal is to stay alive and not lose. But no matter how long you play for, you won't win a prize at the end for getting a high score or anything. So it's basically a simple high-score minigame, like Tetris. Anyway, in Stuff It Puzzle, you have to erase as many of the unmatched squares as you can in 1 minute and 30 seconds. There's 2 modes in Stuff It Puzzle, which are Challenge Mode and Time Trial. In Challenge Mode, you attack the CPU by matching the most squares as you can before the time runs out. Meanwhile, in Time Trial, you're trying your best to get the highest score possible before the time runs out. And yes, if you win in Challenge Mode, you get to take a perk from a character. But not in Time Trial, since you're not attacking anybody. You're just beating your own high score or something. And lastly, in Quiz Puzzle, you try to erase all the unmatched squares in one go. Which the puzzle can be referencing a heart, an inchworm, an airship, etc. There's only a challenge mode for Quiz Puzzle, but I don't think it'll make sense if it were to be a time trial thing or something. That's why there's a Quiz Puzzle edit mode in the main menu for a reason. But to make up for not having an extra mode in Quiz Puzzle, they gave each character a bonus puzzle to solve. So that's a neat bonus, I guess. You really don't have to play the bonus after beating a character. But it's a neat addition that they didn't need to add. And with single play covered. That's it. That's all what Puzzle Guzzle has to offer as a game. Do I still think it's a very underrated masterpiece of a puzzle game? Definitely. Especially when the game has pleasant music, charming bouncy shapes, and beautiful artwork. It's clear that people who developed this game truly cared for what it wanted to offer. And for that reason, thank you, Puzzle Guzzle. Even though nobody talks about you, I'll be here to admire what you brought to the PSP. If you're interested of checking this game out, I say play this game on emulation using PPSSPP. The link is in the description for the game and the emulator. But before I close off this video, I must ask, why is it called Puzzle Mawasks in other places? What the hell is a Mawask?